There was a time when I believed fullness meant safety. Full calendar, full inbox, full shelves, full heart, or what I mistook for one. Every moment had to prove I was doing enough, being enough, earning my place in a world that rewards the busy and forgets the still. But the nights kept coming, long and heavy, where even sleep felt like work. I would lie there scrolling through other people's lives, measuring my worth in their highlights. My mind was a crowded room, no windows, no quiet. I prayed once, not with words but with exhaustion. Please, let something make sense. What I didn't expect was silence. It came one morning when my phone died mid-scroll. No music, no notifications, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. At first, it felt like loneliness. Then it started to feel like space. I looked around my apartment, the stacks of unread books, the clothes I kept just in case, the trophies of a person always chasing. For the first time, I didn't feel proud. I felt heavy. And somehow, that honesty was a kind of mercy. I started clearing the table, not because I had time, but because I needed room. Each small thing I put away, the empty cup, the pen, the unopened mail, felt like loosening a knot I didn't know I'd tie. It was strange. The less there was around me, the more I could breathe inside. That's when Eckhart's words came back to me. To be full of yourself is to be empty of God. I never thought of God as a man in the sky. I thought of it as the quiet that rises when you stop performing, the divinity that appears in a single unguarded breath. And that morning, I felt it, not as thunder or revelation, but as gentleness, a presence in the space I had finally left open. So I kept going. I cleaned a drawer, then a memory. I stopped rehearsing old arguments in my head. I wrote one letter I'd been avoiding and deleted another I'd never sent. And with every act of release, the world came closer. The light, the wind, the laughter from the street below. I was still me, but without all the noise of proving it. I realized fullness was never the goal. Presence was. Because when you stop filling every silence, life has a way of speaking. When you stop clutching for control, kindness finds a way in. When you make room, love recognizes the invitation. Now, on most mornings, I light one candle before work. I let the flame burn without needing it to mean anything. It's small, ordinary, and alive, the way I hope to be. Sometimes I still forget and fill the day with noise again. But even then, I know the way back. One quiet breath, one cleared corner, one simple prayer of letting go. I used to think emptiness was what you had when life took something from you. Now I see it differently. Emptiness is what you offer, the space that makes room for grace. And when that space opens, you begin to feel it. The world has been waiting to pour itself in. There's a quiet ache behind the things we keep. Some of it is memory, yes, but some of it is fear. Fear that if we set something down, even for a moment, we'll lose the proof that we once mattered. I stand at the closet again. The door yawns open like a question I've been dodging. A slant of late morning light spills across the floor, warm but uninvited. The air smells faintly of cedar and old perfume. I tell myself I'm just cleaning, but deep down, I know I'm negotiating with ghosts. Each hanger holds a story I've been too polite to end. There's a dress I wore the day someone told me I looked radiant, before they left. A coat from the winter I worked double shifts, trying to afford a life that always seemed one paycheck away. A pair of shoes from a trip I never took, still with the tags on, waiting for the version of me who was supposed to get braver. Every object here is a fragment of longing, and I keep them because I've mistaken remembering for belonging. I trace my hand along the fabric. The cotton is tired. The colors have softened. Still, I hesitate, as if the moment I drop it into the donation bag, I'll lose the thread that ties me to who I used to be. somewhere inside, a small voice says, if you let this go, who will you be without it? It's an honest question, because most of us are taught to build ourselves out of proof, grades, jobs, relationships, clothes that tell a story. We chase certainty, not peace. And when the old layers no longer fit, we don't peel them off. We keep stacking new ones on top until our own skin starts to disappear beneath the weight. I sit down on the floor, the closet gaping above me like a sky full of old stars. The city hums faintly through the window. Somewhere a siren passes, quick and fading. I think about how much energy it takes to keep pretending we're fine, to keep carrying what we've outgrown because letting go feels like failure. The truth is, I've kept some things not because they serve me, but because they once saved me. That sweater saw me through heartbreak. That old phone case still carries photos of the apartment I left behind when I finally chose peace over noise. These aren't just things, they're witnesses. But even witnesses can't follow you forever. I realize sitting here that safety has turned into a cage lined with good intentions. My life is filled with objects that used to comfort me, now only reminding me of the seasons I survived. And survival, while noble, is not the same as living. A small laugh escapes me, quiet, almost embarrassed. How strange that the things I thought were holding me up are the very things holding me back. Maybe this is what Eckhart meant. To be full of yourself is to be empty of everything that matters. Maybe fullness isn't abundance, it's congestion. Maybe the real courage is learning to stand in the space after you've let go, before anything new arrives, and call that space sacred. I reach for one more item, a stack of letters tied with a blue ribbon. They're from someone I loved once, someone who loved me almost enough. For years, I couldn't bear to read them, couldn't bear to throw them away either. I untie the ribbon, read the first few lines, and realize the ache has gone quiet. The words are just words now. Kind, small, done. I place them in the bag gently, like lowering flowers into earth. The sound of the paper sliding against fabric is soft, almost tender. For a moment, I feel tears at the edge of my eyes, not from sadness, but relief. Because sometimes the wound isn't that we lost something, it's that we never gave ourselves permission to move on. And maybe that's what healing really is, not erasing the past, but letting it rest. I sit back and watch a beam of sunlight move across the wall. Dust motes drift through it like slow confetti. It feels like the room is exhaling. Maybe I am too. When I close the closet door, it doesn't feel like goodbye. It feels like grace. Quiet, unforced, long overdue. I whisper into the stillness. You can keep the memories. I'll take the freedom. And the room answers in its own language, with space. It happened on a Tuesday, not a special one. Just another morning when the world expected me to move quickly. I had promised myself I'd finish sorting the closet before work. Just a few more boxes, I said. But when I opened the door, a loose shelf gave way. The thud startled me, sharp and final, and a cascade of forgotten things tumbled to the floor. For a second, I just stood there, frozen between laughter and tears. It wasn't the mess that undid me. It was what the mess revealed, how tightly I'd been holding my own history together, afraid that if one piece slipped, the rest would follow. I knelt down. Dust bloomed into the air, soft and gray. A photograph slid from between two books. Me at 21, smiling in a way that didn't reach my eyes. I remember that girl, always performing, always auditioning for approval. I looked around at the clothes, the papers, the shoes, all of it waiting for someone to decide what still mattered. and for the first time, I saw it clearly. I wasn't organizing my things. I was trying to manage the museum of who I used to be. The thought hit me like a quiet thunder. How much of my life have I spent curating the past instead of living the present? I sat on the floor and let the silence settle. It was heavier than grief, but gentler than shame. I realized how many times I had replayed old scenes, conversations where I said too much or too little, chapters that ended before I was ready. It wasn't nostalgia. It was fear disguised as loyalty. We think loyalty means never changing, but sometimes the truest loyalty is letting the old version of you rest in peace. I brushed the dust off the photo and set it aside. That girl had done her best. She tried hard to be liked, to be good, to deserve her place in the world. And she survived. That's her gift to me. But survival doesn't have to be the shape of every tomorrow. The shelf lay on the floor, cracked but not broken. I could fix it with a few screws, but I didn't rush. Instead, I stared at the space where it used to be. A blank stretch of wall that somehow looked like relief. I thought about Meister Eckhart's words again. The soul that lets go of all images finds what it truly is. Maybe this was what he meant. Not a command to destroy, but an invitation to stop clinging to what can't breathe. A cold cup of tea sat by the doorway. I took a sip and smiled at its honesty. Tea doesn't pretend to stay warm forever. It cools, it changes, it becomes something else. Maybe I could too. For the first time in months, I didn't feel guilty for not having it all figured out. I didn't feel the old panic of needing a 5-year plan, a backup plan, a reason for every emotion. All I felt was a quiet truth rising from somewhere deep. If I keep holding everything, I'll have no hands left for what's next. That realization wasn't dramatic.
It didn't come with music or tears. It was more like a click, the sound a lock makes when it finally lines up with its key. I started to gather the fallen items, but I didn't rush to put them back. Some went into the donation bag. Some I folded neatly, setting them aside for one more look later. But there were a few I simply couldn't keep, not because they were bad, but because they belonged to a life that had already served its purpose. One by one, I placed them in the bag. The sound of fabric settling was soft and kind, like rain. I whispered, "Thank you," again and again, not out of ritual, but out of recognition. Gratitude is how we say goodbye without bitterness. When I finally stood up, my knees ached a little, my back cracked. My heart felt unexpectedly light. I looked at the half-empty closet and saw more than space. I saw possibility. I saw proof that absence can be generous. And maybe that's the hidden mercy of letting go. It's not about losing. It's about returning to yourself, to peace, to the simple rhythm of a life that can finally breathe. I closed the closet door halfway and left it there. Not fully shut, not fully open. Just enough for light to slip through. The next morning, the apartment felt different. Not cleaner exactly, but quieter, as if the air itself had exhaled. The closet door was still half open, and the sunlight had found its way in, striping the floor in gold. It was such an ordinary sight, yet it looked almost holy. The kind of holiness that doesn't need a name, just space. I stood there, tea in hand, and thought about the emptiness I had been so afraid of. For years, I believed it was a punishment, a hollow sign that something had gone wrong. But now, standing in that light, I wondered if emptiness was never the enemy. Maybe it was an invitation. I remembered a line from Meister Eckhart that I'd underlined in an old book. The soul that lets go of all images finds what it truly is. I didn't fully understand it when I first read it. Back then, I thought letting go of images meant renouncing everything. Ambition, memories, identity. But now it made sense in a gentler way. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about loosening my grip. We spend so much of our lives clutching the pictures we've drawn of ourselves, the roles we play, the stories we tell to sound put together. But those pictures can't grow with us. They keep us performing a life instead of living one. When we release the image, even just a little, we begin to meet life as it truly is, unscripted, spontaneous, full of grace we didn't earn. I glanced at the half-empty shelf. There was nothing profound there, just folded space. And yet, that space was speaking. It said, you don't have to keep filling everything. Some parts of you are meant to stay open. I thought about how Eckhart described God not as a figure to be chased, but as a presence that fills the room when we stop trying so hard to deserve it. Maybe that's what freedom really is. Not a victory march, but the simple act of standing still long enough for life to catch up to you. Outside, the city was already loud. Someone was honking. A child was laughing. A neighbor's door slammed shut. Inside, everything felt balanced. I walked to the window and opened it wider. The breeze moved through the room like a living thing, brushing the curtains, lifting a strand of my hair. I closed my eyes. It smelled faintly of rain and coffee and possibility. And for a moment, I wasn't measuring or managing or naming anything. I was just here. This stillness, was what I'd been missing while chasing enough. It wasn't about doing less or caring less. It was about being present enough to notice what was already offering itself. The light, the air, the ordinary grace of morning. I turned back to the closet and began to move slowly. Not as someone cleaning, but as someone praying. One shirt, folded with care. One empty hanger, left hanging. A box of letters, retied and stored away. Not because I need to read them again, but because I can now let them rest. Each gesture felt like a small ceremony, the quiet rhythm of reclaiming my life one simple act at a time. And as I moved, I thought, maybe I've been wrong about what it means to fill a life. Maybe fullness isn't about having more. Maybe it's about noticing what's already enough. There's a kind of peace that doesn't ask to be proven. It doesn't need to be perfect or permanent. It just asks to be trusted, like breath, like light, like love that doesn't need to explain itself. When I finally stepped back, the closet wasn't empty, but it was lighter. And in that lightness, I saw myself reflected. Not the self I've been trying to build, but the one that had been waiting underneath all along. I whispered aloud, just to test the sound of it. Maybe freedom isn't about gaining more. Maybe it's about making room. The room didn't answer, but it didn't have to. The silence between my words was full enough. The next day, I didn't wake up with any grand plans, no schedule for transformation, no list titled How to Let Go and Become Whole. I simply woke up, stretched, and felt the quiet. That was new. The absence of hurry. The closet stood open, sunlight spilling onto the floorboards like water. I noticed the way it reached the donation bag beside the door, brushing its edges as if blessing the change. There's something sacred about small beginnings. They rarely feel important while they're happening, but they shift the entire rhythm of a life. So I started small. The first thing I did was breathe, really breathe. 3 slow inhales, 3 slow exhales. It's astonishing how much the body softens when you let it know it's safe again. Then I reached for one drawer. Just one. Inside were scraps of paper, pens that didn't write, and receipts from a season when I believed productivity meant purpose. I threw most of them away. And as I did, I realized every object we release gives us back a fragment of our own attention. Because clutter is never just physical. It's emotional static. Every unused thing whispers, I'll get to it later. And later becomes the shape of our anxiety. So I let it go. It wasn't easy. There were small pangs of guilt. The voice that says, you're being wasteful, or you might need that someday. But underneath those voices, another one had begun to speak. It said, "You don't owe your past this much space." That voice felt like love, patient, wise, forgiving. When I finished the drawer, I made tea. Then I did something Eckhart might have called a prayer without words. I sat in the chair by the window and didn't reach for my phone. I just watched the light move. It's remarkable how light behaves when you give it time. It shifts colors, deepens, stretches, finds corners you didn't know were there. Maybe life is like that too. After tea, I chose one more act of release. I took a small box, filled it with things that didn't need to stay, and whispered a quiet "thank you" before sealing it. That thank you was important. It turned letting go from loss into gratitude. Every goodbye deserves a little grace. I didn't stop there. Throughout the day, I tried to make space in other ways that had nothing to do with closets or shelves. I turned off notifications for 1 hour. I ate lunch without scrolling. I took a short walk and left my headphones at home. The first few minutes felt awkward, almost naked. But then something shifted. I started to hear the rhythm of the world again. The wind threading through leaves, a child's laughter, the distant music from a passing car. I remembered what it was like to live inside my own senses instead of inside my head. It's funny, all the books and talks about mindfulness. And still, the simplest truth is this: presence is just the courage to stop running. By evening, I noticed something else. The apartment looked the same, but it felt different, roomier, like it could breathe again. Or maybe it was me. When I washed the dishes, I did it slowly. When I folded the laundry, I didn't rush to finish. Every action became a kind of meditation, proof that peace isn't something we find. It's something we make, moment by moment. Before bed, I returned to the closet. The donation bag was full, the shelf stood fixed, and the space I'd cleared felt almost luminous. I didn't fill it with anything. I just left it open. A reminder that not every gap needs to be closed, because that's the lesson hidden inside all this quiet work. When we stop crowding our lives with what's over, what's meant for us finally has room to arrive. I turned off the light, leaving one last soft breath in the dark. An uncluttered room is an uncluttered breath, and for the first time in a long time, both felt true. Morning again, the kind of morning that doesn't demand anything of you. It just arrives softly, like forgiveness. The apartment is still. Only the kettle murmurs in the kitchen, that familiar small music of ordinary life. I walk past the window, the air cool on my face, and pause at the closet door. It's still open, just slightly, as if waiting for me. Inside, sunlight touches the empty hanger, a single line of silver catching the light. I stand there, just breathing, realizing how much this small space has changed. Not just in how it looks, but in how it feels. It used to be a monument to the past, heavy with proof, stories, selves I was afraid to outgrow. Now it's lighter, quieter. It feels like a pause that finally learned how to rest. I reach out and run my fingers along the hanger. The metal is cool, clean, unburdened. It doesn't ache to hold something anymore. It's ready for whatever belongs next. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the purpose of letting go isn't to make life empty, but to make it ready. There was a time I thought healing meant replacing what I'd lost. But now I understand. Healing is allowing yourself to remain open, even when you don't know what's coming. I pour my tea, sit by the window, and let the steam rise. The morning light has changed again, more gold than white, more alive than before. The city is waking up outside, footsteps, laughter, the slow start of engines. Life goes on, as it always does. And here I am, part of it again, not watching from behind old glass, not weighed down by what used to be, but present in this breath, this light, this cup, this quiet. I think of Meister Eckhart,
The way he spoke of detachment not as coldness but as love in its purest form. To release the image so you can hold the truth. To loosen your grip on what's passing so that what's eternal can finally touch you. Maybe that's what I've been learning all along. That we don't find peace by holding on tighter. We find it by daring to open our hands. The closet isn't empty. It's honest. It reflects back the truth that every ending, every item we release, every chapter we close, is simply making room for life to keep unfolding. And isn't that what becoming truly yourself is about? Not building more walls of identity, but allowing yourself to stay porous, soft enough for joy to enter again, free enough to love without fear of loss. I sip my tea and smile at the thought. The taste is simple, earthy, warm, nothing dramatic, but wholly satisfying, like a small reward for choosing peace over proof. When I glance back at the closet, the light has shifted again. The empty hanger now glows faintly, golden, like a quiet halo of possibility. I whisper, not to anyone in particular, but maybe to life itself. Maybe emptiness isn't absence, it's readiness. And somehow, that feels like the most honest prayer I've ever said. Because readiness is where hope begins. It's the moment between letting go and becoming. The breath before the next chapter starts. Outside, a bird lands on the windowsill. Small, bright, alert. It doesn't stay long. It doesn't need to. It came to remind me that life keeps moving toward the light, even when we're not chasing it. I think about the person I was when this story began. The one afraid that letting go meant disappearing. Now I see. I didn't vanish. I made space. And in that space, something new, something more honest, is starting to grow. Before I leave for the day, I turn once more toward the closet. The air feels still, sacred in its simplicity. I whisper one last thing. What if the space you clear today is where peace will land tomorrow? Then I close the door, not tightly, just enough for light to rest along its edge. The room breathes with me, and in that breath, everything feels possible again.